Well, class, today we're going to be looking at two concepts that are probably one of the most important when it comes to the Civil Rights Act and our responsibility to make sure that we are dealing fairly with our employees, and that is distributive and procedural justice. Now, I won't go into any detail here at the beginning, but we'll be talking about that here at the first of the slides here as we continue on with the rights of both employer and employee, and we're also going to be taking a look at other means of being able to arbitrate disputes and come to settlements without having to go to court. So let's go ahead and start today as we look more into justice and arbitration solutions. Welcome back, everybody, and today we're going to be looking at some more elements when it comes to employee rights and responsibilities. Specifically today, we're going to look at some important elements that we have to deal with when it comes to justice. So let's go ahead and get started. Organizational justice. Now, organizational justice is the fairness of decisions and resource allocations in an organization. It's how fair you treat or how fairly you treat people within an organization. Now, it involves several elements. The first is procedural justice, and that's the perceived fairness of the processes used to make decisions about employees. For instance, if you have a process for bonus rewards, then that process has to be fair to everybody. It has to be equal. The process has to be the same for everybody. Now, distributive justice is the perceived fairness in the distribution of outcomes. So, for instance, if everybody has gone through the same procedure to receive a bonus, then the way that it is distributed should be equal. Everybody should get the same amount. Now, this came about really through the disparity in pay that men and women used to get. In the past, we thought that men needed a little more money because they had families to raise, and the attitude was, well, the woman is usually single, so she doesn't need that much, so we'll give more to the man because he has a family, without regard or little regard for what the woman may have to take care of financially and so forth. So we have procedural and distributive justice as the fair process and then the fair distribution of bonuses and rewards and processes and outcomes. Now, there's two words here. Well, really one word, but it's used twice, perceived. Perceived means that there doesn't have to be a real disparity going on. But if I perceive there to be one, then we have problems. And this is why many of our courts today are backed up the way they are. It's because of people who perceive of wrongdoing without really understanding that, no, that's not the reality. But they wait until after the courts decide that before they really find out what's going on. How can you help alleviate that? Well, be transparent. Be forthright in the way that you expect people to perform, and then let them know how you distribute those performance rewards. Interactional justice is just the extent to which a person feels like they are being treated with dignity and respect. And that's really not just a business term. That's a Christian mandate that we should love one another and elevate each other and be good stewards of those that God puts in our charge. Open door policy is just the accessibility that an employee has when it comes to talking to management. It's a policy that allows workers with a complaint to talk with someone in management. Now, unionized employees have a formal grievance procedure. They're not able to just walk in and say, hey, boss, I've got a problem. They have to go through the unions. Union-free firms can use an open door policy. So normally the unions will handle the employee disputes, and the employee, his or herself, can go in and handle the disputes that are non-union. ADR is alternative dispute resolution, and there are several methods that you can use outside the court system to resolve disputes. You have, first of all, arbitration, which we're going to talk about, peer review panels, and ombudsman, or ombuds, as the slide indicates here in just a minute. So let's take a look at these. Arbitration is using a neutral third party to make a binding decision, thereby eliminating the need to involve the court. Right now, the courts are backed up anywhere from 6 months to a year with all these complaints that employees are launching against employers. So they're saturated with cases to look at. So the ability to get a dispute resolved quickly using the courts is next to impossible. So oftentimes they'll go into arbitration. And usually this neutral third party is some retired judge or someone who is knowledgeable in labor law and employment law and so forth, and they will retain this person. Both will agree to it, and whatever the judgment that this person renders, they will both respect. So, and they don't have a chance to appeal it or anything. They have to go by what the arbitrator says. Now, compulsory arbitration, it means employees waive their rights to legal action until arbitration is complete. And then you have peer review panels. And this is kind of like an internal committee that forms to review the disciplinary actions, and they make recommendations. So you are really judged based on a party of your peers at this point. Now, ombuds or ombudsmen, as many are known, are people outside the normal hierarchy who act as independent problem solvers for both management and employees. They're the complaint department, really. And a lot of times they may be the spouse of an employee who works there, and it's the ombudsman's job to take the complaints to management and try to resolve those complaints. Mediation is different from arbitration in as much as a mediator is more like a referee. They sit down, they don't judge, but they help bring the two sides together, management and labor, to be able to iron out or voice out their grievances and so forth and come to a mutually acceptable conclusion. And it fosters, as you see here, communication among the parties and provides options for settling the disputes. Now, privacy is something that is guaranteed by the law. It's an individual's freedom from unauthorized and unreasonable intrusion into personal affairs. Now, the company can only go so far in your personal business, and there are limitations to that, and that's what your privacy rights cover. Now, there's been a change in the nature of privacy issues because of technology. So let's take a look at some of those changes. It used to be you couldn't go and tell everybody what an employee put down on his or her criminal record, let's say. Now we have the scope of privacy expanding into the world of the internet and social media and so forth. So let's take a look at those. Internet communication. Internet is a fast, it is a wide-reaching source of communication, and as such, it is very hard to control that. Once that email is sent or once that text is sent, it's gone. So you have the difficulty and challenge with internet communication. Social media. There are people today who will look at your social media page to see if you are a responsible or productive or positive citizen. If they find out by going on your social media page that you're a part of the Black Panthers or you're a part of the Antifa or Ku Klux Klan, then they can take action against you, especially in the hiring process. They may decide not to hire you at all. And people question today, should they be given access to social media to be able to make those employment decisions? Mobile devices, again, these are means of telecommunications, and the whole system itself provides for quick communication to a broad, sweeping group of people. It is beneficial in many ways, but it can also hurt you in many ways as well. Employee records, we talked about, making sure that the privacy of a person is protected. That means their physical well-being. That means also anything that would involve them that would be pretty much not out there for general consumption, for people to know. So they have provisions under the Americans with Disabilities Act, security of employee records, whether it's paper or electronic. You have the responsibility in HR to protect both the employee and the employer. So that's a wide sweeping responsibility that we have now to protect the employee's right to privacy. Now, advocacy and handling concerns, you want to handle things, as you see here, informally. Free speech only goes so far within the organization, but what about a person who sees an organization, their organization, committing wrongful acts? Well, this is what we call the whistleblowing program. And with all of the government fanfare with whistleblowing, it's become a popular term. But whistleblowers are people who report wrongdoings, or here it is again, perceived wrongdoings committed by their co-workers or employers. So it doesn't make a difference if the employer is doing right or wrong. It's what the individual perceives. So again, transparency is important. But they report the company, and there are certain protections that they have for being a whistleblower, which we'll see here in the next slide. You have the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, which was enacted after Enron. This mega corporation was brought down for wrongdoing by one employee, one executive who was fairly new, who saw that they were doing improper accounting and stock reporting. So just that one whistleblower brought down that whole organization. The Dodd-Frank Act, any guilty company cannot retaliate by firing the person or being given out punitive damages or punitive actions. They have to give the individual back his or her job if they fire them. They have to provide back pay and double back pay to make up for lost compensation, and they have to cover all of the legal costs. So it's best from a financial standpoint just to do right in the first place. Now, having your phones, email, social media, all of that falls under technology. And you see here, bring your own device, where employees use their own mobile devices in the workplace. We go back and forth with this. How much should a company be given the right to intervene or to monitor your personal business on your smartphone and so forth? If it's the company's computer or phone, then you can be subject to monitoring. But what about your own device? There are some companies that won't even let you bring in your own personal device. or if you bring it in, you can't have it out or use it unless you're on a break or on lunch or whatever. That's probably, from a security standpoint, going to be the best move. But you should provide guidance on how they should regard personal devices and electronic monitoring, and then you should also develop policies so that there won't be any question or confusion about what's going to be expected. Now, figure 15.5 is just a diagram of the actions that you can take. It's straightforward. Develop a policy on electronic communication, communicate it explicitly, and I would have a written copy of it. Obtain signed permission from employees that they can be monitored, or that they can monitor you. I would also have a page where they have read and understand your policy on communication. Monitor for business purposes only, and then enforce a policy through disciplinary procedures. So this is fairly straightforward, but it's good information that we need to put into action so that we can protect ourselves and not have to worry about being sued for invasion of privacy issues. Now, these are just some behaviors when it comes to the employee rights and personal behaviors. Counterproductive behavior won't be tolerated, and that's bullying, substance abuse, stealing, sabotage, anything that you deem counterproductive. You don't have to go by just a guideline. Your business is unique, so whatever you think would be counterproductive, that would be considered that. For instance, in church, if someone is teaching in your Sunday school class Mormonism, that wouldn't be tolerated. So you need to be able to have some type of procedure for that. Dress and body appearance limitations, visible tattoos, certain clothing, body piercing, and that's just a few. There was a business that went to court. They were sued by an employee because they decided to have a casual Friday. They were trying to raise money for some charity, and if they raised X amount of dollars, they could come in their casual clothes on Friday. Well, as you know, there's one person that's going to ruin it all. She came in a halter with no bra, with what we call, I guess, Daisy Duke shorts, and caused all kinds of disruption with it. They told her to go home and change. She refused because she said, "This is how I dress casually," and it went to court. So you've got to be careful with these things. Off-duty behavior, if you're wearing the clothing or identification of a company, you can be responsible for your behavior. And weapons in the workplace. As we get into a more violent situation with people, we need to be able to define criteria for personal protection. You want a safe workplace, but do you want everybody carrying weapons and so forth? So those are some issues that you're going to have to deal with when it comes to the employees' rights, and expect them to have a certain level of personal behavior.
I can't emphasize enough how important it is that the worker has the perception that everything is doing and being done fairly in the workplace. We're going to be looking at some theories as we move along, but when it comes to procedural and distributive justice, you have to, beyond anything else, you have to make sure that the processes that you have in place are the expectations that you have in place are equal across the board, and that when you distribute rewards, that those rewards are equal across the board. Even the perception of inequality can get you in trouble. So take these concepts to heart, understand the nature and the application of them, and you'll be well on your way to having a successful HR program that deals fairly and justly with the employee. Take care, have a good day, and we'll see you tomorrow.